Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean Stevenson. Can I get a sound check from Michaela just to make sure everybody can hear me?
Sounds great, Sean.
Okay, thank you, Michaela. Again, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the virtual career fair for veterans with Texas A&M University and the National Security Enterprise. My name is Sean Stevenson, and I will be moderating the Zoom portion of the event today before we make the transition into Brazen for the career fair. Just a quick housekeeping note for everyone to be able to focus on the discussion. We have disabled your audience audio. That's in the lower right-hand corner. You'll find the buttons for participants, chat, and Q&A. Clicking these buttons will open up a pane to the right of the presentation. We encourage you to send your questions through the Q&A only throughout the presentation. Now I would like to share a welcoming word from General Ramirez, Commandant, Texas A&M Corps of Cadets with you. General?
Howdy, my name is Brigadier General Joe Ramirez, and I am the Commandant of Cadets at Texas A&M University. I'm also a 31-year veteran of the United States Army who transitioned to this position that I currently hold after 31 years of serving my country, and I've been doing this job now for 10 years. First, let me thank all of you and your families for your service to our nation. As you know, at this time in our country's history, since 9/11, less than 1% of the American population has served our country in uniform. You took that step to step up for your country and serve our nation, and we are all thankful for you and your families for your service to our nation. Congratulations also on taking advantage of this unique and interesting opportunity with the nuclear enterprise. This is a great opportunity for you to showcase and market your skills and show this very important facet of industry what you can bring to the table as you go to these career fairs. This is the first career fair that has been hosted by the the Office of Veteran Affairs and the National Laboratories Office from the Texas A&M University system. You've already made a successful transition from the United States military to college. Now it's going to be time for you to think about and focus on what it means to transition from college life to a life in the civilian sector as a business professional. Now, transition is never easy. Anybody that's had to do any kind of transition understands that we as human beings are just not likely to transition very easy. It's difficult for us to change. However, I want you to remember that as veterans, you've already experienced transition in many forms in your time in the military. You've transitioned from rank to rank, from position to position, from levels of responsibility at one level to an even increased level of responsibility at another level. You transition from unit to unit. You may have even transitioned from military occupational specialty to another. And we've all transitioned from duty station to duty station, moving from one location to another, ourselves and our families. So you've done transition many times before. This is not new to you. Remember that as you begin your transition now to job fairs and thinking about what you're going to do in the future as a business professional in the nuclear enterprise. One of the things that I learned quickly when I transitioned from the United States Army into this position here is the fact that you've got to learn quickly how to adapt to the environment you're in. But military personnel pretty much know how to do that already. You've got the skills already inherent in you and how to transition quickly to a new environment, to new people, and to new experiences. Use those as you begin your transition to become a business professional. As you begin these job fairs and start thinking about going out and seeking these opportunities, prepare yourself well in advance. Think about all the skills that you bring to bear that can be used in these various jobs, and don't be afraid to market those to the people that you're going to meet in these job fairs. Ask questions. Learn all you can about the job, about the people, about the responsibilities, about what you might be able to bring to that position. Network with the people that you meet. Find out about them, learn about them and what they've done and what their experiences are, what their role in the organization is, and how you might be able to fit into that organization through them. Identify and apply your strengths. Every one of you brings unique talents and skill sets to this job. use them. Think of all the strengths and skills that you bring to the job market just from your military experience alone. Leadership, a strong work ethic, teamwork, and the ability to focus attention to detail. All of those are critical, especially when you're talking about the nuclear enterprise. Use those strengths that you bring just from your military career as you begin looking at job opportunities in the nuclear enterprise. It's a great opportunity for you and for your families as you begin this transition from college life to becoming a business professional. I want to thank all of you for your willingness to consider taking a job opportunity in this very critical field that is truly focused on our nation's security, just as you have been for years before in the United States military. Thanks again to all of you for your service to our nation and to your families, and I wish all of you nothing but continued success in the future. God bless all of you, and God bless America.
Wow, what a great message. Can I get a quick audio check again, please, with Michaela?
Absolutely. Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. I do know General Ramirez wanted to be here live with us, and he couldn't be, but I don't think that it could have been a stronger message for all of us as veterans and those serving. So phenomenal message. Thank you, General Ramirez. I would now like to introduce Brian Smith. Brian is the Director of the Office of Acquisition and Management and Head of Contracting Activity at the National Nuclear Security Administration. Welcome, Brian.
Great. Okay, thank you very much, Sean, for that. And yeah, those I tell you, those words from General Ramirez, I don't know that there's much more for me to say. So I'll quickly get off the stage here, because you all have a great panel to listen to, and I don't want to get in the way of that. They're going to talk about some exciting things that they're doing across the nuclear security enterprise. But just to quickly set the stage and kind of offer the structure that for the team that you're going to hear from today. So the National Nuclear Security Administration, or NNSA, is the federal entity that oversees the work of the nuclear security enterprise. And the nuclear security enterprise are those labs, plants, and sites, representatives from whom you're going to hear today, that carry out the work of nuclear security for the nation. It is a very, very mission-focused organization. When we talk about nuclear security, really the work that we do, that NNSA oversees, buckets into three primary categories. There's the weapons piece of it, there's the nuclear non-proliferation piece of it, and there's the naval nuclear propulsion piece of it, that being the nuclear reactors that power our submarines and aircraft carriers. So it's very mission focused, and you're going to get a lot of rich detail of what that means today. But I want you to keep that in the back of your mind as you hear these great panelists talk about what they do. Another thing I want you to keep in mind is the locations that we have, where we exist across the country, because that presents an exciting opportunity for somebody who's interested in getting into this mission space. I've got labs, plants, and sites all over the country. You want to live on the West Coast? Awesome. I got a laboratory out there. You want to stay in Texas? Maybe you're from Texas. You want to stay in Texas? We do critical work up in the Panhandle, supporting the nuclear security enterprise. You want to get out to the East Coast? I'm from Florida, so maybe I'd be, more of an East Coast type of person. We've got work going on, important work going on in South Carolina. So, and everything in between. So keep that in mind in terms of opportunities. The nuclear security enterprise is 50,000 strong, and we're hiring thousands of folks every year. So there's just a lot of opportunity there. And in terms of I'm a federal employee, so I am part of NNSA. I'm coming to you from Washington, D.C. right now on Independence Avenue at the NNSA headquarters in the Department of Energy building. But the 50,000 strong that I referenced, those are, they're contractors, and the folks you're going to hear from are contractors, but I don't even like to use that term. They're strategic partners. And I want you to get a sense of that as you hear about the important role that these folks play in the nuclear security enterprise. We truly are one team. They truly are strategic partners, different from a contractor. And I've got a lot of experience with DoD. And, you know, when we engage with a Lockheed or a Boeing to go, you know, build and deliver the newest weapon system, I'm here to tell you that's much more of a contractor type relationship. And the relationship with our strategic partners in the nuclear security enterprise is it's different. And we really benefit from that. So keep that in mind as well. And finally, the thing I'd leave you with is, you know, I'm a veteran myself. I showed up in this family on active duty as an officer in the Navy, and that was with the Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program. And I tell you, I was on a 5-year tour to Naval Reactors headquarters. If there's submariners out there, please don't hold that against me. But I was Naval Reactors headquarters, and I really enjoyed what I did. And the more I got exposed to the broader NNSA mission, the more I started thinking I wanted to plant roots and happen to be here in Washington, D.C. and, you know, and pick up a civilian job with the organization as a federal civilian. So I did that, and I couldn't be happier. Because again, you know, someone who raises the right hand in uniform as you all did understands the importance of mission. And I could have gone and worked at a lot of different areas. Banking, finance is one of the things that what I was doing is kind of common for folks to go off and do. And I thought, you know, if I went and worked for a bank, I'd pick up the paper and I'd read about, you know, what's going on with nuclear weapons or with submarines. And I would, you know, miss being part of that game, and I would regret being a spectator to that. So staying in it has really been good for me, and it's that mission that really resonates. So the transition to me was very, very easy. You'd work around this mission space, whether as a strategic partner at a lab plant or site, or on the federal side. And I tell you what, it's there are veterans all over the place. You know, I run into more Air Force officers out at Albuquerque. I've got a big federal presence in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where the Sandia laboratory also sits. And I'm joint qualified, and it's a good thing because I tell you, the Air Force office, they've got another language. But anyway, I just want to make the point that in terms of that, you know, moving from that military mindset into a civilian organization, a lot of civilian places you can go. I mean, you can go anywhere you want, especially a group like this engaged at Texas A&M. But coming, you know, to work in the nuclear security enterprise, there's kind of a common language and a common devotion to mission that I think resonates with a lot of folks. So with that, I do want to now turn it back over. I appreciate y'all kind of letting me set the stage there. Really excited about what the panelists are going to talk about today, and thanks for your time.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate your time. Can I just do a quick sound check with Michaela again?
Absolutely, still great.
All right, thanks. Hey, just to pass on before we start the panel, you're very fortunate to get an opportunity to hear from Brian, hear from General Ramirez. You know, there's a lot of very unique attributes in regards to the national security and enterprise. So again, thank you, Brian, for your words. I would now like to welcome our panelists and thank them and their organizations for their continued collaborations with Texas A&M. The panel today consists of Jeremy Best. Jeremy is a program manager for the Office of Nuclear and Military Affairs. Jeremy comes to us from Los Alamos National Laboratory. Thank you for being here, Jeremy. We've got Allison Ellerson. Allison comes from the Explosives Trainings Manager. She's a weapons and complex integration. She comes from Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. She's one of my colleagues on the West Coast that Brian talked about. We're in Livermore, California. Welcome, Allison. We've got Cynthia Ellis here with us. Cynthia is a Principal Emergency Response Specialist with Nevada National Security Site out there in Nevada. Welcome, Cynthia. Thank you for being here. We've got Eric Richardson here. Eric is the Deputy Facility Manager for Savannah River Tritium Enterprise in Savannah River Site. Thank you, Eric, for being here with us. And myself, I am the Veteran Military Outreach Strategic Program Manager. I also manage training, development, and education for Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, and I work in human resources at the lab there. So welcome, again, welcome panelists. So if we could now, before we get into our questions, I'd ask each panelist, we're going to start with Jeremy to give a brief introduction to let all the candidates know who we are, what we do, and where we come from. Jeremy?
Thanks, Sean. I'm Jeremy Best, and I'm a retired Marine major. So I retired back in 2016, and before that, I actually started my career in 1996 as an enlisted. So I enlisted out of Texas, out of Waco, actually. So I joined, and then I went through the MESET program, commissioned in 2004, and really enjoyed all of my time in the Fleet Marine Force. And I culminated my career as a physics professor at the United States Naval Academy. After that, I retired and came here to northern New Mexico, where it is mostly sunny. But if you can see my background, that was a picture of my backyard. So it does snow here. We get all 4 seasons, and it's fantastic to be here. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, Allison, if you give us a quick intro, that'd be great. Thank you.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Ellerson. I'm the Explosive Training Manager at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. I just got out of the Army about 1.5 years ago. I was an engineer officer for 3 years, and some jobs I held, I was a battalion S1, a sapper platoon leader, and then a brigade adjutant. I only graduated from college in 2016, so I'm still a fairly recent college graduate. When I first started at the lab, I was a work planning engineer. So basically in the Army, we did a lot of risk assessments. It's like that, but it's for experiments. So I did that for about 1 year. And now with the Explosives Training Manager position, I'm in charge of the program that allows our experimentalists to handle explosives and do tests on that.
Thank you, Allie. Appreciate that intro. Eric, would you go next, please?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks a lot, Sean. Hi, guys. I'm Eric Richardson. I guess my career started in 2003. So that's when I graduated high school and immediately went into the nuclear power community of the Navy. I was an enlisted machinist mate when I started out. Did that for a little while, went through the school, and then also went through a commissioning program, similar to Jeremy, called Seaman Admiral 21. Through that program, I was able to go to Penn State and get my degree in mechanical engineering while on active duty, which was a pretty good opportunity. Got commissioned through that in 2008, and then returned back to the nuclear Navy community, went back through power school, and then served on a nuclear fast attack submarine out of Norfolk, Virginia. Did a full tour through that, a bunch of different jobs, a couple of deployments to CENTCOM and AFRICOM. Came back from that and actually went to the Nuclear Propulsion Training Unit in Charleston, South Carolina, where we train all the sailors and officers going out to the fleet. Was an engineer there, and then also the training manager. Completion, and that was where I made my transition. So I did about 12 years, a little over 12 years, 12 and a half years in the military, and then made the transition to the Savannah River site where I work now, specifically with the Savannah River Tritium Enterprise. So what I do there, I started as the training manager. I did that for about 2.5 years. And then since then, I've been a deputy facility manager for a tritium processing facility where we load components and test the gas transfer systems that actually get put into the nuclear weapons around the country. So pretty cool way to continue to give back without still being in the uniform. So thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate that. Cynthia, if you go next, please.
Hello, everyone. Cynthia Ellis here in Las Vegas. I joined the military Air Force back in 2000, right out of Temple, Texas, which I'm sure Jeremy is probably familiar with, not too far from Waco. Initially came in doing ICBMs, facility maintenance, basically a maintainer on the Intercontinental Ballistic Missile Program. Did that for a couple years at F.E. Warren Air Force Base, and then transitioned to Vandenberg, California, where we did test launches a couple times a year. Then decided, had a little maybe midlife crisis, maybe I was a little young for that, but about 10 years in, decided to transition to a sensor operator career field on the MQ-1 Predator. and then later on the MQ-9 Reaper. So that definitely was a drastic change, but I loved the mission, loved what we contributed to the defense of the nation. So I was really happy to do that. Now I'm back here in Vegas working at the site in North Las Vegas. We are, I'm principal emergency response, but mostly handle air traffic and scheduling for the site. So thanks for having me. My daughter graduated from Baylor, but don't hold it against me.
Thank you, Cynthia. Appreciate that. And I am your last panel member. Again, my name is Sean Stinson. I currently spend my time today managing both our new veteran and military outreach and recruiting program. Very passionate about bringing veterans and military into our laboratory, just like all the panel members here. Before coming to the lab, I worked for Ernest and Giulio Gallo for about 11 years, managing operations, logistics, training, development, education, a few other things there before working for Gallo. Can I get a sound check just for everybody out there? I'm having a little bit of audio challenges. I want to make sure you can hear me okay. Okay, I'm getting a thumbs up from Jeremy. Bad timing, I apologize. I think we all wish we were there with you. After I left the Gallo family, actually before I left the Gallo family, I was a captain in the Marine Corps, and I was leading a division level school for 7 combat MOSs. I was also a ground officer in light armored reconnaissance. Before I was in the Marine Corps as an officer, I had the opportunity to go to the Naval Academy. I got commissioned in 1996. And like many of your panel members, I was enlisted as well. So I served in the late 80s and early 90s in the light armored reconnaissance community, as well as the special operations community with Force Recon I got out as a corporal before I went to the Naval Academy. So as you can see, it's a very dedicated and experienced panel. We're really looking forward to this opportunity with you. We wish we were there in person. We're all very personable people, but unfortunately we can't do that. So I'm going to start the panel. I'm going to ask a question. These are general questions that we really felt like would be very beneficial for you as you're making your transition. I'm going to start with the first question, and we'll start with Jeremy. Share your transition from military to civilian life.
Thanks, Sean. So my transition was pretty interesting. The first big lesson learned, I was hired on as a manager, and I found out pretty quickly within the first few months that you don't give orders to senior civilians. I had a senior scientist, and I wanted him and his team to do some work. And I said, "Hey, Larry, you're going to do this." And he kind of laughed at me in front of the whole group and said, "Jeremy, that's not how that works." He said, "We need to have a conversation." So that was kind of my biggest stepping stone in transition, was realizing that it's a different world in the civilian community. And I learned a lot from that experience and subsequent experiences. But I thought that was pretty interesting to just be sort of gently told that I was in a different world. And I've since adapted my approach. But yeah, that's very much a reality, that you don't give orders to civilians. You have a conversation and you can convince them.
Thank you, Jeremy. Great story. I love hearing that personally myself. Allie, can you tell us a little bit about your transition, please?
Yes. Okay. So about a year and a half ago is when I transitioned from the Army. And honestly, it was a roller coaster. I wasn't sure when I was going to get out, where I was going to move to, or what job I was going to do. But I actually went to a military job conference, which helped me narrow down what I thought I wanted to do. The conference also made me realize you need to stay positive, and that so many companies need your skills that we learned from the military. I also relied on LinkedIn a lot. I connected with a few teachers, some old grads from college, and who mentored me through the process and helped give me contacts to other companies too. I kept applying to different jobs until one clicked at Livermore, and now it's a year and a half later. I'm still getting used to civilian life though, but I do love it here and glad this opportunity worked out. It's 72 and beautiful here today. So yep, love it here.
Thank you, Allie. Appreciate that. Eric, can you tell us a little bit about your transition, please?
Yeah, no problem, Sean. So it's been almost 5 years. So October 15th was my 5-year anniversary at my current job. So I actually transitioned to this job. I was still on active duty. I was on terminal leave, which was a pretty good opportunity for me to not really even have a gap in between. So I took a couple weeks of leave at the end there to move. But so I had a constant, insurance and everything, and didn't really have to worry about that too much. But the transition for me was not that hard based on the fact that some of the things I already said. So with LinkedIn, other people that I've known that had recently gotten out, it's really important to build that community of people that you can reach out to and ask a lot of questions. And the other thing that really helped me was preparing early. So I know the folks that we're talking to aren't necessarily going straight from military to the workforce, but you are leaving college and going to the workforce. So it's kind of the same principle as start early. So like I was applying to jobs, going to job fairs, talking to people 8 months before I was getting out of the military because I knew I was. Don't wait. A lot of people will think, or you will talk to some companies that'll say, hey, call me back when you're 3 months out or 2 months out or something like that. But that's not necessarily the case everywhere. So start talking to people 8 months, 7 months out, so you can kind of line it up. And what ended up happening with me, and it's probably similar to a lot of the folks on this panel and other veterans, is like they talked about, there's a lot of companies want the skills that we are able to provide to them. So you don't need to settle for the first job that gets offered to you. Make sure that you identify, and probably the best advice that I got throughout the whole transition was, you have to understand or pick what the most important thing is to you, because you can want money, you can want location, or you can want mission. There's some other things too, but those are really the big ones. And you're not necessarily ever going to get all three, but you got to pick the one that's most important to you and do that one. So if it's a job that you don't want to do, but it's a lot of money, don't go do it. You're not going to be happy. So pick which of those is the most important and really go. And that's why I'm here. I'm in Aiken. Everybody talks about how awesome it is where they live. I'm in Aiken, South Carolina. Wonderful place to live. Very cheap cost of living. Never thought I'd be able to live in a place like I get to here. And I also have a great mission and pretty good pay. So that's why I'm here out of the 10 different opportunities that I had. So pick the one that really suits you the best.
Eric, thank you. Appreciate those words of wisdom. Cynthia,
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about your transition, please?
Sure. I think I'm the newest butterfly to transition to the civilian world. Newly retired as of 1 August of this year. And oh man, transitioning from the military in the middle of a worldwide pandemic was super fun. I was sitting in a room in Cannon, Clovis, New Mexico, where I was stationed without my family. They remained here in Vegas because I got that assignment late at 18 years. So we decided, knowing what we knew about Cannon, no disrespect to New Mexico, but it's not the prime location that you would want to be in, that they were going to stay here. And so I went out there, I was doing my time, I was pumped, I was ready to retire. And then I was supposed to leave end of April, and we all know what was going on at the end of April, but I had been approved for Hiring Our Heroes program, which basically allows transitioning military members to work in a civilian capacity up to 180 days before transition. And no one was picking us up. No one was hiring. No one wanted to take on interns. So I was battling and dealing with that, but thankfully I was still able to leave. Did all my out processing through scanning in paperwork and over the phone, and was able to get out here. And, just by the grace of God, MSTS called me and was like, yeah, we think you have a very particular skill set that we would like to use. So it ended up working out. But as the others have said, you have to start early. You have to be proactive. I had to do all that research. I had to get involved with Hiring Our Heroes, and then doing it out of state was also, a challenge. But when you want something, you'll make it happen. So.
Thank you, Cynthia. Great transition during a pandemic. I don't think it could get any more challenging. I'll share a little bit about the same. I think we've all got very, very similar messages. I did very similar to Eric. I made a decision with my spouse and my young daughter in 1999 that I was going to leave the Marine Corps. So I started planning 2 years before I got out. And so I met with some different folks. I started to get a better understanding after my last deployment to the Middle East, what that transition would be like. So for me, I was able to get into education, development, and training. I was able to lead a division school at Camp Pendleton. So through the transition, my last 9-month billet, I was able to do some of the things I knew I wanted to do when I became a civilian. So very, very fortunate there. So I would recommend as much planning as you can do, do it naturally. From there, like many of the panel members here, I worked with Cameron Brooks, I worked with Bradley Morris, I worked with the Lucas Group, I worked with Orion was one other one. And so just finding places that offered opportunities for you, utilizing those resources. I was very fortunate as a Naval Academy grad to use the Naval Academy Business Resource Directory, a very good group of people that, again, start that networking early, that were interested in you and helping you out. So that's actually where I got my opportunity. I found a gentleman working for Gallo who was a West Point graduate who knew the largest winery in the world would hire as many military people as they do, but Gallo has a ton of military experience, active duty and reservists. So that was a natural fit. This was a little bit naturally. You spend 12 years in the service as a enlisted Marine in the Navy at the Naval Academy and as an officer as well. So it can be a little bit challenging. I think the lessons learned for me was humility, and what I mean by that is network, find humility. Don't try to do everything on your own. I was so used to being in a leadership role and leading my path, but I really knew very little about the civilian workforce. So find mentors, find coaches, find people who really value your skill set and what you bring. They really helped me transition that first couple years to where I was very comfortable doing things on my own from there. So that wraps up our first question. Our second question, again, we'll start with Jeremy, is what advantages do you think you've had in the workplace because you are a veteran?
So the advantage, I think General Ramirez hit it right on the head when he said that the adaptability, adaptability to change, the ability to lead through change, to lead up and down chains of command or authority, and really focusing on people. So all of you have a certain skill set and a lot of different skills that you learned throughout your service. And it really comes down to people. And so that would be, at least in my opinion, the biggest advantage is focusing on people, because that's what matters in any profession. And just being adaptable, understanding your mission set, understanding when change is happening, and being able to lead and manage through the change. Those skills, which are pretty universal across all of DoD, those will help you out phenomenally when you transition into a civilian leadership role. And so those are definitely it. And General Ramirez definitely nailed it there.
Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate it. Great words of advice. Allison, some thoughts?
So I think due to my experience in the Army, I'm able to speak and communicate to a team, come up with a plan, execute, and then get the job done a lot smoother and faster than most people. I was a battalion S1, so I created memos, templates for the commander. So I'm naturally very detailed, right? Because they taught us to be like that. Well, just this past week, I was in charge of our training course that's actually partnered with Texas A&M. They call it TEACS. And with very strict COVID controls, having 15 students in one room, so many details that easily could have been missed, right? But because I was taught to be so meticulous, it turned out great. In the Army, another good example, he was used to be running around with a chicken cut with his head cut off and putting out fires. So here, a lot slower pace. I'm efficient. And I get a lot of things done just because I was used to that fast pace in the Army. There are a lot of veterans here at the lab, so it also helps you connect with a lot of people. I think people know that I'm dependable, that I follow rules, and will do whatever I can to help them out. So a lot of advantages.
Thank you, Allie. I appreciate that. Eric, some thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. So I kind of second what Ali just said there is you almost come with a pedigree where people know exactly what they're getting for the most part. And for those of us that have served the military, everybody's not created equal and there are some differences, but if somebody's coming from a particular field, there's certain traits that are associated with that that you can kind of fall back on, that people are going to give you the benefit of the doubt almost when you apply. Another thing that really helped me during my transition is just from being a veteran is that a lot of these places, especially at the labs and plants where we work, is a huge a huge amount of military people working there already, right? So it's almost like a fraternity where you're going to an interview panel and I interviewed for a bunch of different jobs, but at this particular one, 2 out of the 3 panel members were former military members, and then you immediately start talking, well, what'd you do in the military? Okay, it's just a way for you to connect that people that weren't in the military don't have that advantage, right? So you just have it's another a foot in the door for you to be able to make that transition, to build your network a lot easier. It's a lot easier to make those connections. And that's really what, like I said, everybody here probably has their own experience on how they got the job they're in right now, but that's how mine was. It was a connection that I made through my previous job in the military that knew another person that worked where I am right now. We connected, shared my resume, and then they started sending me jobs and said, hey, apply to this one, apply to this one, apply to this one, and kind of helped shepherd me through that process. So it was very helpful to me to have those prior military contacts at the place where I work right now. So,
Eric, thank you. Appreciate that. Cynthia, can you give us a couple thoughts?
Yes. I don't want to, repeat everything that everybody said. I mean, because those are just really, I think, the main advantages for hiring a veteran. I think when civilian companies are looking for, a candidate, when they see veteran on there, they know they're getting somebody who can lead. They know they're getting somebody who's dependable. They know they're getting somebody who's going to, bring that attention to detail. So all of those things, speak volumes, and I think definitely have a lot of reasons why we were hired to begin with. I would just like to throw out there, along with the networking, because I think it's, when your name is out there and when you're in certain career fields, people know about that. My network in particular, there's 5 of us. We're all retiring within, 3 years of each other. I was the last one. So I heavily depended upon them. And then also just using the programs. I can't say enough about hiring our heroes and the opportunity that it gave me, but it also gave all 5 of those friends. They used that program as well. So look into those programs. Sometimes you don't find out about them until TAPS or, something like that, but you have to, do the research, because there's opportunities to go to school, before you actually make that final transition. So I would say just those are definitely advantages just to being in the military period. So just look into them, apply, and be adamant about it.
Thank you, Cynthia. Without being repetitive and making sure we're not taking up too much time, I think the only thing I would add to my colleagues is, and we all hit on it in different ways, is how to work effectively with teams. I think about all the different times I had the opportunity, whether it was in the Marine Corps as an officer, or whether it was when I was enlisted doing special operations in the Middle East, or the opportunity I had to play football at the Naval Academy. We all of us have great opportunities to work in teams. And I think that was probably my biggest advantage coming into the workforce, is the experience in getting things done through others. A true sign of a strong leader is how successful that team is, and how well and how efficient and how effective that team is. And often we bring those experiences to the workforce, and we're able to inspire and coach and teach and really bring people along and get the best out of them. So I would leave you with being a strong team player, knowing how to collaborate. Very, very important in the workforce, is something we all know how to do. So our next question, I'm going to start with Jeremy again, is what are some challenges you've had to overcome in your career?
Thanks, Sean. Challenges are always interesting because they come in different forms. For me, it was the biggest challenge was shifting my mental paradigm. I think most of us understand that you go from a group that has a common focus, a common mission, and a common goal, and everyone has a very specific personality type to try to get stuff done. You're surrounded by people that are they just want to get stuff done. and they'll do just about anything, working late hours, working, weird jobs and stuff that you may not have thought you signed up for, but you're going to get it done anyway. It's that buy-in for the work, that shifting the mental paradigm. There are a lot of different reasons that people work in the civilian sector, and some of them aren't on the same page as far as getting stuff done. So going from that team mentality where everyone's pulling on the rope in the same direction at the same time, to people that are getting by, or they're just working for their family, they're working for the weekends, they're working for other reasons, and they're not always fully into what they're doing. That was a big shift for me, and it was a real paradigm shift for me to realize that I wasn't on a unified team anymore, and I had to use my leadership to try to build that team and build that cohesiveness, and that was on me. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate that. Allie, can you share a couple thoughts with us?
So some positions will fit you perfectly. Some you might be really good at, but don't particularly enjoy. Some might you be doing a really great job, but inside you're drowning. So my first job out of the Army was an adjustment for me. I wanted to jump right in, start updating things right away, but then I was told to slow down and just chug away little by little, but not overnight. It's very important, though, to view each job as a stepping stone that will get you to that next opportunity. Yes, my first job was easier than my previous positions I held in the Army, but having that positive outlook and doing your best will set you up for other opportunities in the future.
Thank you, Allie. Appreciate it. Eric, can you share a couple challenges that you've had to overcome?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm not trying to get a chuckle at everybody, but we'll start with HR, I guess. Does not necessarily exist in the military like you would think, and feelings don't matter so much in most situations, but it really just goes along with what everybody said. You don't order people to do things in the civilian world. So that is definitely one of the biggest things that you need to understand. And another thing that's a little bit different, and it depends which field you go into, but you're gonna be working with a lot of different age group people. So when I was in the military, as the division officer, I had 15 guys. I was 27. They were all right around there. And now I come out, I'm a manager. I come out and I become the training manager at the place I am right now, where a lot of the people that I was managing had been working in that job longer than I'd been alive, right? So it's a little bit different to try to work with those people. And you don't just show up that day and everybody's like, oh, the new guy's here. In the military, you show up and you're wearing your lieutenant bars, and every person there is going to salute you because that's what they do, and that's the military. That is absolutely not the case by any means in the civilian world. It doesn't matter if you were an 06 or an E9, you show up to this new job, you're the new guy, and they don't care what you were in the military. And it's great to go fall back on those experiences, but you have to be really careful about this is the way we did it in the military or in the Navy, especially the Navy nuclear community. There's the people that are all about it, and there's people that don't want to hear anything about being Navy nuclear because they've heard it so much. So it's just really trying to figure out how to still use your experience, and, not that it doesn't matter, because it does, and not to discount yourself because you did earn the respect, or you have earned that respect by wearing the uniform and serving your country. But that doesn't give you the right or the authority to treat people how you want. And it's just not that you should have treated people bad in the military either, but it's a whole different world when you get to the civilian world.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate that. Cynthia, can you share maybe a challenge or two?
Yeah, so for me, I think in my military career, because I'm so new to my civilian career, just the challenges with separations. I was mill to mill. So I think we were a good 10 years into our marriage before we caught up to actually spending more time together, from deployments and, just my recent, 2-year PCS to New Mexico. For a majority of it, I was, just a single parent, 2 kids. And trying to balance that as well as, the demands of a military career. But for me, just as going into the civilian world, I'm still, like I said, I just was hired in September, end of September. So I do find myself questioning, like, am I allowed to say this? Is it appropriate to, do this or ask this question? Because you just hear so many different things. And You're not just allowed to talk about pay, you're not allowed to talk about, you know, anything, which is, it's just a difference in, like Eric said, with HR. I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do with this? What is a vacation purchase plan? So, you know, it's just, I've been relying a lot on my supervisor and just trying to navigate those things. But I think that's what we all go through. And to be honest, I'd rather have those silly questions than deal with another 2 years away from home. So.
Thank you, Cynthia. I think the only other thing that I could add of value for you, because I've had some of the all those same challenges, is for me finding value at a national laboratory. And what I mean by that is I don't have a PhD. I wasn't the typical have a STEM background. I have some STEM background, but I wasn't your traditional lab employee. So for me is, how do you become credible? How do you work in a workforce and bring value, bring leadership, bring tools? And that's what I had to prove. So it was definitely a challenge. I've been at this laboratory for 9 years. It took me probably a year to really help folks understand my strengths and how I bring those things to the laboratory and how I can help the laboratory. So it's not meant to be intimidating. National laboratories are phenomenal places to work, but I'll use the analogy of an aircraft carrier. Our laboratory has 7,500 employees. We have every job you could possibly imagine, not just STEM jobs. So some of those challenges are finding value. You'll find value, and you'll want to make sure folks understand how do you bring that value to the laboratory. So just for the panel, we're going to have to go a little bit quicker. It's 12. I'm sorry, I'm on the West Coast. It's 2:49. So we'll go a little bit quicker for these last two questions. First one to Jeremy. Why did you choose to work at a national security enterprise versus a for-profit institution?
So to keep this moving, I just want to reiterate what Brian said. Brian hit it perfectly. It is the sense of mission, the opportunity to continue to serve and have a mission, a common set of goals and things that you're working towards. So that really is why I went to Los Alamos National Laboratory. Is there is a common mission, everyone's working towards the same goal, and it's that sense of duty, sense of accomplishment, and working national security. The cool thing is I get to pick what I wear instead of being told what to wear. So that's the best part.
Great story, great advice. Appreciate it. Allie, can you share some thoughts?
So I hate that I have to pick out the clothes. I wish I was still in a uniform. But anyway, so I know I needed that extra purpose in my profession, especially after getting out of the Army a little sooner than I originally anticipated. To me, it helps give me that extra meaning to what I do, and it helps me put in those extra hours, try a little harder, knowing it's part of something bigger.
Perfect, Allie. Thank you. Eric, can you share some thoughts in regards to why you chose a national security enterprise versus a for-profit company?
Definitely, yeah. So all companies have a mission, and we keep saying the same thing over again. But I get to go to work in a place that does. We're the only people in the world, or the only people in the United States that does what we do, processing tritium for our nuclear weapons. So I go every day into my facility, deep into my underground bunker, where we process all these radioactive gases, and still get to do something that is almost similar, very similar mission to working in the military, because we directly support the military. We create the product that we do and ship it directly to the submarines and the ICBM. So it's a direct tie to the military. So the mission thing is definite there. I get to take vacation when I want to take vacation. I don't have to ask permission, so that's pretty cool. But that also works against you when your people want to take vacation. You can't tell them they can't. So that's kind of another thing to get used to. So vacation's great. At least for my contractor, I can't talk about the others, but great benefits, great appreciation for military time. For people that are in the reserves, they're very, very accommodating to people that are in the reserves, at least at my lab. So that's another advantage that I have. But yeah, it's a wonderful place to work.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. Cynthia?
For me, I chose it. Well, I kind of feel like they chose me when they called for hiring our heroes, but it's structure. It's a lot of times I think maybe it was a little bit of fear on my part. Initially, I was, looking into doing real estate or something drastically different than what I did in the military. And, you know, in the end, I went with what I knew, which was, you know, a structured job, a steady paycheck, great benefits, and I took advantage of all of those opportunities. So I'm still super excited though.
Thank you, Cynthia. I think the only thing of value that I would add is like Jeremy, like Eric, you know, it's for me, it was about finding purpose. And when I went out to the civilian sector and I worked for a for-profit company, the Gallo family is an amazing family, amazing organization. But what I found myself literally every day yearning for was giving back to my nation. And I had this great laboratory right in my backyard. And I kept having family tell me, hey, you know what, I think you're going to find a lot of people who value the same principles that you do. And it took me about 11 to 12 years to figure that out. But, you know, thinking that financial opportunities were better in other places. But what I found was a laboratory, like Eric shared, and the whole panel. When I go into work every day, I find true satisfaction. I'm very gratified with what I'm doing, even though I may not be mission critical work. I work in human resources, but I provide a great deal of information in regards to recruiting, bringing the right people in, training and educating those people and keeping them at the laboratory. So, you know, it was really much more about working at a place where we're really connected as a nation for our defense. So our last question is, and I'll start again with Jeremy, what words of advice do you have for veterans that are here today to learn about career opportunities at the NSE?
So this being Texas A&M, get your higher education done. Take the opportunities that are given to you. Keep working at it. Keep improving. Focus on what matters to you. Get out there. Get your name out there. Use LinkedIn. Use all your resources and just get it done. Find where you want to be. And I'm going to reiterate what Eric said. Find where you want to be and then find the job where you want to be. The salary will happen. Don't worry about that. Find the place you want to be, get after it, and go do it.
Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate it. Allie?
Sorry, I turned off my video by accident. So there are endless opportunities at the National Laboratories that you've heard about today. If you still want to be part of the fight, but in a different way than being a soldier, join the lab. Even if you don't think your military credentials match the posting, still apply. Let the managers decide you aren't qualified, not yourself. One also thing, I learned something new about science and engineering every day. So if that, you know, gets you excited, come work for one of the labs. You will not be disappointed.
Thank you, Allie. Eric?
Yeah, so like I said, they're wonderful places to work, great missions, great benefits. You're not going to be disappointed coming to work somewhere that has a mission that directly supports the military, directly supports our national security. And it's just such a wide array of things you can do. Like I said, I came in, I had an operations background, a little bit of training. I was a training manager for 2.5 years. Now I'm back in operations, running a facility, and next year I could run QA. And then there's just unbelievable opportunities. And like I said, at my site, my particular place has about 800 employees, but it's a 10,000 person site with tons of different opportunities. And it's very easy once you get a position to find something that maybe better suits your, and I think somebody else mentioned that earlier too. Don't think you're going to get to this first job and that's your forever job. You're going to be able to get there and find other stuff. So I guess advice would be apply for anything that sounds interesting to you. Make sure you tailor your resume to the posting. Try to civilianize your resume as much as possible because nobody understands the acronyms that you have in there. And as a hiring manager I probably hired 30 or 40 people at the job that I'm in right now. If I can't understand what I'm reading on your resume, you're not going to get an interview. So you got to be really careful. Have somebody else vet your interview or your resume to make sure that it is English and not military lingo.
Thank you, Eric.
Yep.
Cynthia?
I don't think I can really add too much to that except, you know, use your network, build your LinkedIn, make contacts, you know, connect with any of us, you know, in the career fair and, you know, add us to LinkedIn and look for those opportunities. Like I said, it hit me hard that it truly is not necessarily about what I knew. And especially as a master sergeant, I was just like, you know, I know all this stuff, but I think a lot of it wasn't translating well into the civilian world. And like I said, I was in a very specific career field. So you definitely have to, connect with people and build a network and do your research.
Thank you, Cynthia. I think the only thing that I will add is one of the things I shared before is don't be intimidated by a national laboratory. Jeremy gave you some great advice. Get that education done now, but realize there is a place. And so you've got a lot of different examples from some of us who were enlisted, some of us who were an officer, some of us who were on both sides of the fence. There is a place for you. And it really starts with building a network, starting with the 5 of us. We're here for you. That's why we're here. Start to research the national laboratories, get a good idea and understanding of our mission space, what we do, how we support DOD and DOE. We're all very unique, but we all face the same mission and partner together really well. So I'll leave you. We are out of time. I'm going to hand this over to Janelle because I know she's been monitoring questions on the chat. On behalf of the entire panel, thank you. Thank you for your service. We look forward to working with you. Hopefully we're going to get you into our boost and brazen. And again, thank you to Texas A&M as well.
Thanks, Sean.
Very much, Sean. We do have a few good questions to pose to our panel. I'm going to throw this one to Cynthia first, since you're one of our newest transitioned veterans. What was the turnaround time from submitting a resume to hiring?
Oh, initially I submitted, I had a job before doing the Hiring Our Heroes program. I submitted the application in January, and I believe I got a call back in about March. I was trying to follow up, and, it seemed initially they were very interested in me. It was like, they were getting right back to me. Hey, fill this out. Hey, fill that out. And they're like, okay. So I did all of that. I answered all those, personality questions, and I submitted it and make sure everything was good. And then nothing for like a month and a half. And so I didn't know what to think. It was the first time I had applied for, a job in the civilian world. And so I just figured, they weren't interested anymore, but I didn't quite know what I said or what I did. So shockingly, they just emailed me out of the blue in March. And so that was the first experience that I had. And then with Hiring Our Heroes, like I said, that's a little bit of a different process, but I applied for it. I was accepted into the program, and then they send out your resumes locally here in Las Vegas to companies like Amazon, Caesars, Allegiant, all the major companies here in Vegas. And yeah, COVID hit, so I didn't hear anything back from that. And I think that the landscape has changed a little bit, just with the pandemic. So you have to be patient, but you also need to follow up as well. But understand that, everyone's going through a difficult time right now. So it's not, heartwarming, but, just give it a little bit of time. I've heard some people, I was just talking to a coworker yesterday, he said it took 8 months before he heard something back on a resume. So
That's a good point. Allison, do you have anything to add since you've done this more recently too?
Yeah, so depending on the company, it could be a couple months, it could be the next week they call for an interview. I think you've got to be ready to adapt for either option. One company, I had 5 interviews and it took a month and a half. When the job at the National Lab here in Livermore, the next week they called me, I had a phone screening. 3 days later, I had my in-person interview. So it's very independent, and just adapt and you'll be great. And don't give up, keep trying.
Sean, any input from an HR perspective?
Yeah, I just think I think Cynthia and Allison really summed it up well. It's really, again, networking, getting a good idea of what people have gone through, similar type of situations. You have a lot of people that are looking out for you. You're very fortunate as a veteran that you have, to Eric's point, a lot of veterans, a lot of military folks within these laboratories. One of the things a lot of us are doing is focusing on outreach and recruiting for veterans. And so, seek and find those people. I think the biggest challenge is during the transition is is translating your resume. I found that's typically the hardest and most difficult thing to do. So find, if you're struggling, find a mentor, find somebody to help you with that, translating that language to help the team, the panel, really understand who you are and what you do and what you bring to the position.
Good deal. Jeremy, I'm going to throw this next question to you. How often did you encounter negative perspectives about being a veteran?
So that's a great question. I did run into that occasionally. So like some of the panelists have said, you know, not everyone is created equal. And there are some negative perceptions about veterans, specifically combat vets, that they're unstable and that they're just, you know, kind of edgy or whatnot. So I ran into that a little bit, but I found just by personality discussions and just saying, okay, hold on, let's have a discussion about that. Why do you feel that way? And let's talk about my background and how, you know, not every veteran is what you fit into a box or what you may have seen in Hollywood, that we all have our own personalities. We are people after all. So it was really focusing on the people aspect whenever I got those negative perceptions, just trying to gently turn the conversation into one about people in general, right? So yeah, it does happen, but it's about shaping the conversation and turning it around and saying, why do you feel that way? And how can we address that and take a look at me, and do you perceive me in that same light? So it's really focusing on people.
Eric, I see you nodding. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah. So it's kind of like what he was talking about there is there's almost a stereotype depending on what you are. And like I said, if you're branded as a combat vet or a Navy nuke, as soon as you start saying anything, you got half the room saying, yeah, that's amazing. That's exactly what I'm gonna do. And then the other half of the room's all rolling their eyes saying, here we go. Here's another guy from the Navy coming to tell us how great everything was there and how we should do everything. So you got to be really careful with that. And that's all I can really, and I mentioned it before, don't discount it. Don't just throw it all away and say, I'm not going to bring any of these ideas up because anybody can, and that's anywhere, not just at a national lab. Any idea you bring up, half the people are going to love it, another half are going to hate it. So you just got to find the best way to really work with people as individuals, as a couple people had mentioned, to, you know, be respectful to everyone, you know, understand you have to treat people with respect, period. For them to ever respect you is really what I'm saying. You got to earn that back. I do want to add one more plug to the last question. Use Glassdoor. There's an app, Glassdoor or Glassdoor.com, but that is a great way to go. So if you apply to a specific place, it will say, hey, the process usually takes this long. There's a way for people to go in there and kind of tell you. You can also check salaries to know where to negotiate salaries, which is a very, very difficult thing coming from the military to try to figure out, okay, when it says desired salary, well, I have no idea, like what ballpark you're looking at. And from an HR perspective, I look at that every job that I hire somebody for. I look at their desired salary to see if it's even in the ballpark. So Glassdoor is a great way to go look at that and understand what you're trying to get, because everybody can't come out and make 150,000 a year as much as you want to. It's not going to happen, you know. So sorry, just a plug for Glassdoor. I'm not endorsing it, but you know, it's a great site. I use it a lot.
No, that's a great reference. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sean, I'm going to put this one to you next. What are internship opportunities for current students or continuing education opportunities for those that may be looking at full-time employment? You're muted, Sean.
See, that's what happens when you're trying to man a booth in Brazen at the same time as you're working with the panel. I think we're getting short on time here, but I think what I would add to you is, so I'll speak on Livermore's behalf. We have quite a few internship opportunities. We've got some of them posted right now, so we have folks that can share more detail in regards to those. We typically hire 1,200 interns per summer. With COVID, we hit 50% of our internships. We had to go remote. It was challenging, but we were still able to get it done. But again, I think I would speak on behalf of all, and I don't mean to share on behalf of all the laboratories, but considering we're short on time, lots of internship opportunities. We all thrive on working with folks earlier in their career, giving them the opportunity to do things. We partner with the service academies. We partner with ROTC. We work with JROTC. So lots of opportunities. It's really finding a connection point, finding somebody who to partner with, and seeing what those opportunities are.
Eric, I know you said you've done some hiring. Do you have anything to add on that?
So yeah, as far as interns, I can't really answer the question. I know the site as a whole hires 200 to 300 every year as well. Lots of engineering internships, but also internships in lots of other areas. We actually have them in training. We have one in HR this year. So definitely look at that for Savannah Riverside at least. There are quite a few internship opportunities there.
Good deal. Thank you. I know we are running short on time here to get over to Brazen, but there's been several questions on resumes. All resumes that were submitted to Brazen will be available to the employers. And for the panels, any extra thoughts that y'all would like to leave everybody with? No, good. Okay, well, we've posted the link to Brazen for convenience in the chat. So you can move over there. There's also references to resources for students on our Veterans Office site and our National Laboratory site. Sean, do you want to give final closing?
Sure. I just, again, would like on behalf of the panel, we are very interested in working with you. I encourage you to move over to Brazen, take a look at the different laboratories, talk to Eric, talk to Jeremy, talk to Cynthia, talk to Ali. We've got a lot of different recruiters and represent folks there. If you'd like to know more about different laboratories, lots of opportunities. Continue your service. Thanks for everything you do, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.